Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this session. And today I am joined by Oriana Leckert. Welcome, Oriana. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, Oriana is the head of publishing at Kickstarter, where she helps creators bring a marvelous array of literary projects to life. And she's written and edited for Vice, MTV News, Slate, Atlas Obscura, which I absolutely love, by the way, and many, many more. And today she is here to talk about something that's on everyone's lips in the authors community. And we'll talk about that in depth in just a bit. But first of all, we want to know about Kickstarter. So Kickstarter is, like I said, has been made famous by we all know who. So Brandon Sanderson, obviously, and his famous campaign. Was it last year or 2 years ago? But anyways, that's why. Yeah, last year. So for those of you who don't know, Oriana, can you please explain what Kickstarter actually is and how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform. It allows you to create a project with a funding goal and ask everyone you know or can think of to contribute financially to your creative project and help you bring it to life. And in exchange, you give them early access and rewards. They can choose from as many rewards as you'd like to set up. So you're giving them something in exchange for being one of your, closest community members and readers.
So essentially, you set a goal, and we'll talk about this in depth in a little bit, but essentially you set a goal and you ask people to contribute to reach that goal, which is usually an amount of money that will explain what is needed for, and then in exchange you can give different types of rewards. So I've seen a few crowdfunding platforms come up after Kickstarter. I think Kickstarter was one of the first ones. But what makes it different from the other platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So functionally, the biggest difference is that Kickstarter is all or nothing funding. So if you say, I need to raise $10,000 to do a deluxe faux leather edition of my first novel, and you only raise $6,000, you don't get any of the money. Creators tend to find that scary, but it's actually designed to protect artists and creatives because through the course of the campaign, you're making a lot of promises for the things that you're going to do if you raise that money. So if you only get a partial budget, you're actually not going to have enough money to fulfill all of those promises to do all the things that you said. So by design, we're asking creators to be honest about how much money they really need to bring their project to life, and then not saddling them with a requirement to try to make it if they don't get that much money. A couple other things worth mentioning that set Kickstarter apart in the marketplace. Kickstarter is a public benefit corporation. It's not something that I really knew much about before I started working here, but it's a pretty strict business charter that requires us to consider the impact of our actions on the world at large with everything that we do. So we can't be beholden or like forced by shareholders or stockholders or investors to make decisions that run counter to our mission. And our mission is helping to bring creative projects to life. So we're essentially a mission-driven for-profit organization. The final thing that sets Kickstarter apart, our fee is 5%. That was the industry standard that we set when Kickstarter launched in, I believe, 2009. We've never raised our prices. Most other places where you're either crowdfunding or selling books, the platforms take a lot more. And actually, another piece of that is that Kickstarter has always been committed to giving you your audience. Again, by contrast to, say, a certain behemoth of book selling on the internet, or counter to all social platforms, which keep everything for themselves. The work you're doing to build your audience on Twitter, that audience belongs to Twitter, not you. Whereas with Kickstarter, if your campaign successfully funds, we give you everybody's email address. We give you a ton of access. We give you a lot of demographic information so that you can help make better decisions now and in the future about who's in your audience, where they are, what they want, and how you can best serve them.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the main points that struck me, was the not having raised the fee at all since you began, which is a very very good point. And so essentially, if I am an author and I go to Kickstarter and I want to set a goal. So what types of authors? I know there's millions of different projects that have also come in the past and that are going to come. But in general, if you were to make a bit of an average kind of evaluation, what types of authors do you see come to Kickstarter more, and for what types of projects?
We have a really strong community in sci-fi fantasy, genre fiction more broadly. We've seen our romance has gone, I think, up by triple digits in the last couple of years. Mystery and suspense is also moving upward. So a lot of genre. There's also a strong showing for nonfiction books, particularly like business, self-help. We see a lot of cookbooks. Actually, cookbooks do really nicely on the platform. We're seeing right now a real uptick in special editions. So the kinds of authors who have earlier books that are out of print or new books that are only coming out in paperback, they'll come to Kickstarter in order to fund high end, gilt edge, maybe leather bound ribbon bookmarks, like full of illustrations and other things like that. The kind of project that would be really, really difficult to bring to life without getting both the money and an assessment upfront of how many people are interested in a book like that. To address it, the publishing category also includes magazines and podcasts and media and literary museum exhibitions, literary themed chocolate bars and scarves and enamel pins. So really anything that has to do with the written word, you can probably find on Kickstarter.
So, would you say that it's best to approach Kickstarter when you already have some kind of audience, or have you seen people starting from absolute zero, being on Kickstarter and being able to fund, decent amount of money for their project?
I would say building your community and your audience before you launch is a really crucial element of your Kickstarter journey. Is it possible that you could fund if you have nobody who knows what you're doing? I suppose it's possible, but really what Kickstarter is doing is allowing you to leverage the community that you already have and bring them closer to make a really direct connection with these folks and, as I said, like offer them more and deeper access to you, your work, your creative process, and reward them for being your closest fans. So I do recommend that you spend a good amount of time building that community, making sure, this is one of my corniest lines, but I wind up saying it every day. Everybody's thinking about the funding side of crowdfunding, but you also really need to think about the crowd. That's what you're doing specifically with this kind of fundraising, is figuring out who's in your crowd, what do they want, how can you reach them, what can you give them that's going to really cement the relationship that you have together. So making sure that you already have been building that crowd and know ways that you can get in touch with them is going to really be instrumental to your success.
So essentially, authors can use Kickstarter in conjunction with other publishing methods like traditional or self-publishing. It's nothing exclusive. It's just something that complements all the other platforms.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's certainly nothing exclusive on our end. You will want to make sure whatever other platforms or services you're using, that they don't have rules about where and how else you can do things. But a lot of what we see, like Cory Doctorow, he withholds audiobook rights from his traditional publisher and runs Kickstarter campaigns for his audiobooks. Brandon Sanderson or many of these other prominent best-selling authors who are doing special editions, they've withheld special edition rights from their traditional publishers so that they can have full control over that element of the work that they're doing. People who are on, a lot of people who want to fund a new work and then later put it up for sale on KDP or in other places. Again, check the rules of like what and how you can do that, but also be mindful of your backers, because if you're saying to them, I want you to like get in on the ground floor, early access, be the first one to read my new book, and it's $25, you don't want them to then click over and open up Amazon and see the same book for $20. So you either want to deliver your books, well before you put them up for sale anywhere else, or do, add a lot of extra bells and whistles, or make sure that the pricing is higher, or, just be really mindful of the experience of your readers if you are going to offer your projects in multiple places.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the key elements on Kickstarter is the way the projects are displayed. I'm often on Kickstarter because I also like tech, and so I look at these new, especially I'm a gadget kind of person, so I always look at these new gadgets and also physical products, and they always have a video, showcasing all the features and things like that. But for a book, I think it's a little bit more difficult. I mean, for fantasy or for comic books or for, art heavy kind of books, it's a little bit better. But for a novel, for example, what are, in your opinion, the key components of a successful campaign page for an author?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, Kickstarter's on the internet, and the internet is a visual medium. So making sure that you have visual elements is going to be really helpful. Certainly you can have your cover image, any internal images to break up your big chunks of text. If you only write prose and there's no image other than the book cover, you can use headers that you've designed with some graphics. Think about, making it kind for the eye as it's going down the page. The main elements of a Kickstarter campaign: you have your project video. We do recommend doing a video if that is massively onerous or cost prohibitive. You don't have to. We see plenty of campaigns succeed without them, but there is a preference from the backers to have a video. So you've got your title, your subtitle, your video, and then your story section, and you can use that however you want. It is a really great way to lean into telling your story, not just the plot of your book, but also who you are, what brought you to this work, what inspires you, your budget, your timeline, your collaborators, other things, anything really that you want to talk about that's going to make people feel connected to your creative work, you can put in your story section. And then, of course, there's your rewards, which we keep touching on, but I imagine we'll address in depth soon, where you can offer any number of things to, your backers, to, compensate them or reward them for wanting to be part of your creative journey.
Definitely. And we will get to the rewards because I'm very interested in that. But before that, I think it's so we have to address the elephant in the room, which is the actual the funding that we want to get from this Kickstarter campaign. So the element is, how do we decide how much we're going to ask for? I imagine it's much more difficult than summing the various parts. Like, cover design is going to cost me $1,000. Editing is going to cost me $500, so I'm going to ask for $1,500. How does it work in terms of selecting your end reward, essentially?
It's not actually that much different or more difficult than that. I mean, the best way to think about your funding goal is that you want to find the balance between what you need and what you can get. What you need does require calling print shops, knowing your trim size, your page count, your, any bells and whistles that are going to be included in your book, how much it's going to cost to manufacture, produce, warehouse, ship, and fulfill. All of those costs need to be included. You also need to include your shipping costs, and then any rewards that you're making and what the cost is to manufacture and ship those. All of that is going to come down to how much you need to bring this project to life as you've conceived it. Then you need to think about what you can get, who's in your community, what your readership looks like, what percentage of them are likely to back at all, at what levels. Maybe you can add higher tier rewards if you have a small number of folks with deeper pockets to offset your manufacturing costs. Maybe you can add lower tier rewards if you're just trying to build your list and get a bunch more, to give people small things in exchange for being part of, your network later. But, finding the balance between those two elements, that's really all there is to creating a funding goal. And I should say, I'll put a pitch right now. We have a publishing creator tips page. I know the address, but I'm just getting to it to make sure. It's kickstarter.com kickstarter.com/creators/publishing. There's a large number of resources on that page, including many more interviews with me like this, but also lots of articles and videos. And anyway, there's an article on that page that's called How to Make an Expert Budget for Your Kickstarter Campaign, which will talk through a lot of the elements of how to sort of put all of these things together. It's actually written by someone, I believe, who's also part of Fiction Marketing Academy, which is Russell Nolte.
Definitely, yes. And he's very big, has been very big on Kickstarter, and definitely very successful author. I know the answer to this, but just in case somebody doesn't know, what happens if you actually get more funding than you initially requested for? Does it
Then
stop
you're doing great. Then you're getting... It never stops. It never stops. You can raise as much as you want. In some, we were talking about the sort of like gadget categories. It seems like what a blessing. There are times when a campaign can go so wild that blessing can turn into a curse. If you were planning to manufacture 100 of something and now you have to figure out how to manufacture 10,000, that's going to really change the nature of your business and your life. But no, once you've hit your funding goal, you can keep raising as much money for as long as your campaign is open, and then you get all of it less the fees. So, people have taken to doing stretch goals to sort of help motivate people to continue backing. Although if your main tier is a book, people are going to keep backing because they want the book, regardless of whether you've hit that goal. A stretch goal, if you say, all right, we've hit our $10,000, that's what our main goal was. If we raise another 2,000, we're going to add an extra signature with full color illustrations. If you then don't raise that 2,000, you still get all of your money. Stretch goals are not binding. It's merely suggestions, but it's a great way to motivate your backers, to help you spread the word. If you're improving the product for them, it's a great way to improve the product for you while keeping to your budget. And it's also just a good excuse for doing more promotion and outreach of the campaign itself to announce and promote those new stretch goals.
Yeah, essentially, stretch goals are like incentives that you give to people. If you say, yes, we've reached 2,000 now, come on, let's go to to 3,000, then they kind of unlock a new kind of reward. But speaking of rewards, here we are talking about the main topic. So first of all, very, very big picture, how do we go about selecting rewards? What should we do? And also, I'm very interested in, is it better to have a lot of different tiers because it means more choice, or is it better to focus on 4 or 5?
Yeah, well, so let's see. The main thing with rewards is the more rewards you have, the more complex things will be when you get to the fulfillment stages. So you always need to be thinking about, can I do this? What's it going to cost? What's it going to mean in terms of time and shipping and all of that? I mean, I love to see a lot of rewards, but yeah, I am here to tell you, please do not use Kickstarter to ruin your life. You don't need to make so many reward tiers that fulfillment becomes impossible. There are a lot of ways the way that I recommend thinking about rewards generally: figure out your main tier first. Most likely for this crowd, that will be your book. Is it, one book, a trilogy, a box set, a series, whatever it is? That's the main thing that you are hoping to drive people toward. And then you can think about how to build it above and below. Probably if your main tier is a physical book, your lower tiers are going to include an ebook, maybe an audiobook. You could think about digital rewards. We like to see digital wallpaper, or, if there's imagery in your book, you can make that. Like, you don't want to spend much, if any, money on shipping for low tier rewards. You can do some little swag, stickers, bookmarks, things like that if you want to. It's also cute to do like a 20-song playlist of like tracks you love to listen to while you write, or maybe a pretty designed PDF of like 10 other books that you would recommend for folks who are interested in the kind of writing you do. Small stuff, modest things, not too many physical items. They're just going to get people excited about being a little part of your world. Building higher, now you can kind of think about any sorts of things that you might want to make that you think the people in your network are going to be interested in buying. It's really cool to see these things work thematically with the projects. I can think of a romance series about knitting where she included knitting patterns, and I think at the highest tiers some actual sweaters and scarves and things. I know another fiction writer who happened to have an Airbnb in her house, and so as part of her campaign, she was doing a book club. So she had tickets to the book club virtually, as well as at the top tier, people could come and stay in her Airbnb and attend the book club in person.
Nice.
You can, you can probably see I'm talking to you a lot about rewards that are not t-shirts and tote bags and mugs and like various sort of swag. I think you can do swag if you want to. Certainly people do like some amount of merch, but you do not need to turn yourself into a swag production facility to succeed on Kickstarter. Experience rewards are great. You can do partner rewards if you've got friends who have written books and want to donate a signed copy, or friends who make art or knit scarves or set candles or do anything if they want to donate any of that stuff. Experience rewards, as I said, book clubs, book launch events, outtakes from your book, notes from the field, whatever you're doing that's part of your creative process that you can package up and make exciting for your readers. You can think of that as another kind of reward. So really the sky's the limit. And I will again say on that creator tips page, we've got two different roundups. One is, 96 reward ideas you haven't thought of yet. And the other, I think, is like 72 rewards. We wrote this second one in the early days of COVID, and that's all geared towards stuff you can make and fulfill in lockdown. So it's like digital and experience type items that are not going to cost you a lot of money to produce. So check all that out. Get your gears spinning. The rewards, the sky's the limit. They can be as imaginative as you are.
Yeah, I think, and it's also important, like you said, to think about when the campaign is over and how long it's going to take you to fulfill all that, because, sometimes you underestimate. And I know, for example, very famous author Joanna Penn, she chronicled the whole experience through Kickstarter, and she said when it was over that she underestimated a little bit the time that it took for the print copies or some things like that. And so you really need to, I think, go with what you have first and what you can produce fairly quickly without many headaches, and then think about bigger things that will take more time and funding as well, I think. Definitely. So also, I think some of the things I see on some of the projects I back or I watch, sometimes I'm a little bit discouraged because I see, maybe now it's October 2023. The first batch is shipping in May 2024. So sometimes it's a little bit of a delayed gratification kind of situation. Have you seen that be a problem with, especially with readers for author organized campaigns or not?
It's really important to be transparent with your backers before you start. So if you say the book is already written, typeset, edited, designed, I just need this money to press the button on the printer, send the files over, and then you're going to have the book in your hand in 6 months, you should be relatively sure that they're going to have their books in 6 months. You can also say to your backers, I've only just begun writing. I'm going to need 6 to 12 months just to finish the book. Then it's going to need to go through editorial, copy editing, design, etc. So please give me money now, but you're not going to get your book for 2 more years. If your backers say, that's fine, we want to support you in this journey, then that's great. There's really it really is about what your crowd will bear. And then, of course, you should really build in a buffer for shipping delays and any number of other supply chain mishigas that could happen. And, if things go wrong, keep being really, really clear and transparent with your backers. I think Kickstarter backers are much, much more forgiving than standard online shoppers, provided that you give them information and let them know what's gone wrong and why and how and what your steps you're taking to rectify it as best you can.
Because during the campaign, you can communicate with the backers through email, right?
And after also, you can send
And
backer
after.
updates. Yeah, forever. From after the campaign is done. And you should keep in touch with your backers. It's another great way to reach your audience.
Yeah, another thing, when you said forever, reminded me that, if I'm not mistaken, even the closed projects or the funded projects or the projects that are over are still available on the site. So essentially, you could go in and have a look at things that have been funded 2 years ago, and take inspiration. So they're
Oh
not
yeah.
archived in any way.
Two things about that. Firstly, for current creators, once your campaign ends, you can do a little bit of modifying of the page. That button that used to say back my project, you can change that to say go to my online store or check
Oh yeah.
out my, follow the journey, see my publisher, whatever. You can change that CTA to anything you want, because those pages, the work you're doing and the work we're doing, they're like loaded up with SEO and they're very high traffic, so they will appear in search results for you and for your book long after. So it's good to make sure that they're still going to serve you in some kind of way. But also, Kickstarter is a vast historical repository of Kickstarter. You should absolutely go on the site and look at old campaigns. I am something of a Kickstarter expert because I spend all day looking at and thinking about Kickstarter. You too can do as much research as you are able into what people have done in the past, what rewards people have liked, how they've described their campaigns, what was successful, what wasn't. I also would say the number one tip for anyone even considering running a campaign someday: go on the site right now and back 5 campaigns, even just for $1. Find and follow those creators out in the world. Watch what they're doing. Steal all the best tips. Learn all the smart things that other folks have done so that you can incorporate them into your own work someday.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you, what are your tips for first-time authors considering Kickstarter? So that would definitely be one. It's like reverse engineering the competition, essentially.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So when we get to the part where we've done, we've created our page and we set our goal and the rewards and all of that, I think it's time, it's definitely time to promote our campaign. So in percentage, how much do you think is up to us, and how much does Kickstarter give us a little bit of a hand?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually track that information in everyone's creator dashboard, so you can see in real time how that's going. I would say generally for publishing, between 15 and 30% of your backers are going to come just by nature of being on the platform. So that's through the Kickstarter ecosystem,
That's a
our
lot.
discovery
Yeah.
tools, our newsletters, our various promotions. Yeah. And so then the other, what is that, 70 to 85% will need to come from you. So as I said from the beginning, you will be leveraging both the audience that you have and the audience that you want. But there certainly is a benefit to being on Kickstarter. You're, suddenly being surfaced to all sorts of people who just don't know that they're your fans yet.
Cool. So I'm sure you've been asked this question many, many times. So what is your opinion on the famous Sanderson campaign? How did it reach that level? Because Brandon, which this goes back to what we said before, he did have an audience before, and unlike many people thought, he had been an author for 20 years before that. So it's not really like overnight success, but it was, an amazing success by anyone's standards. So what do you think were the keys there that made it so successful?
I think, the key to Kickstarter is having the right project by the right person at the right time. You're absolutely right that Brandon Sanderson did not come out of nowhere. He was not an emerging author. He has been a major player on the fantasy stage for decades. He has 500,000 YouTube followers and he posts to them all the time. He was known for being out at conventions every weekend talking with his fans. He has not only a vast readership, but a really close relationship with those people. He is so beloved. He also has previously done swag and merch and boxes and books and like a bunch of things like that. So, the infrastructure to produce what his campaign was, for in case folks don't know, his project was called A Year of Sanderson, and it was last year. And the idea was that for every month of 2024, you would get a box from the Cosmere Dragonsteel team. And 4 of those boxes would include brand new, never seen before novels. The other 8 would include swag and merch and all sorts of various things themed after the worlds in which he writes. So That's not easy to make. Everybody looked at $41 million, which is obviously a vast sum of money, but he didn't just put that money in his pocket. That went back into manufacturing, warehousing, producing, and shipping tens of thousands of books and items 12 times over the course of this year. There's a very expensive proposition. So he was a trusted figure. He was a beloved author, and he was also a trusted figure to know that he had the infrastructure in place and a team. I think he's got 75 people working for him to do all of this vast manufacturing. And then, of course, the right project. It was very thrilling in, the mid depths of COVID to hear that while we had all been watching TV and baking cookies, this beloved author had written 4 new novels. Extremely exciting. People were very eager to jump on it. He did a marvelous job of telling his story, of communicating with his audience all the time. And then, of course, once the campaign started breaking records, that develops a gravity of its own. It got bigger and bigger. People couldn't help but take notice all across the traditional publishing industry, all the way over into the gadget industry. The previous highest funded Kickstarter campaign ever, at only $20 million, was a campaign of smartwatches from like 2012. So now suddenly all the watch people are talking about how they're being usurped by a fantasy novelist. It just became, a phenomenon. And of course, that draws more and more and more attention. It rolls bigger and bigger and bigger, and on we go.
Yeah, of course, because I think in the beginning is you trying to attract people, and then the coin flips and it's people coming to look for you on the platform because they've heard, oh my God, who is this huge author and things. And in my small perspective here in Italy, Brandon Sanderson was virtually unknown. And after the Kickstarter, we started seeing his books published by Mondadori, which is one of the biggest, if not the biggest publisher in Italy. And so this obviously created loads of opportunities for him, which I'm sure he would have gotten to eventually anyways, but this kickstarted a lot of his success. Oriana, thank you so much for this. I'm very, very interested in this, and who knows? I know one of my author friends is organizing a online. No, I think it's an in-person event on Kickstarter. So trying to find backing on Kickstarter.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so that's another thing we might think about.
Yeah, if you are the audience, the watcher, the listener, if you are planning to run a project, let us know. I am extremely online. You can find me at Oriana BKLYN on most of the social platforms. I'd love to hear what you're working on, see if I can share any feedback, give you some tips, communicate with other authors. Everybody central to the Kickstarter proposition is a rising tide lifting all the boats. So look around, see what other boats are near you, how you can lift one another up and contribute to one another's great success.
You'll be inundated by emails now, I'm sure. So thanks again, Oriana, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, and guys, don't forget to check all the links in some area under this video on the site, and we'll have links to everyone, and I'll talk to you soon in the next session.